The dust of Jaren swept across the viewports of Docking Bay 17, reducing visibility to near zero. Jax Orin wiped the grime from his scanner and squinted at the readouts. The ancient warship loomed before them, its hull plates scarred from battles fought decades ago. His crew called themselves the Ghost Crew, not from any particular fondness for specters, but because they specialized in making ships disappear. "Systems check," Jax called out, his voice echoing through the cavernous docking bay. "Mina, what's our security status?" Mina Volk's fingers danced across her holographic interface. The blue light cast sharp shadows across her angular face, highlighting the small scar that ran from her left temple to her cheekbone. Exterior systems dormant. No active defenses detected. Yet, she never trusted initial scans. Years of hacking had taught her that the most dangerous systems were always hidden. Jax nodded, watching as Cora and Slink unloaded their equipment from the transport shuttle. The mercenary pair moved with practiced efficiency, their matching jumpsuits bearing the patched-over insignias of at least 3 different military organizations. 800,000 credits, Slink was saying, his thin frame belying his strength as he hefted a plasma cutter nearly as tall as himself. 800,000 for a rust bucket, he whistled. Someone's desperate to get rid of this thing. Cora, a head taller and twice as broad as her partner, grunted. Or desperate to hide something. Jobs that pay this well usually come with complications. Jax had been thinking the same thing since the contract had appeared on their secure channel 3 standard days ago. A derelict warship of pre-imperial design, abandoned after the Third Galactic War, now floating in Jaren's orbit. The client, a corporate entity called Nexus Salvage, wanted it dismantled quickly and quietly. No questions asked, no records kept. Standard procedure for black market salvage operations. But the payment was anything but standard. "I don't like it," Mina said, appearing at Jax's side. She had an uncanny ability to move silently, a skill that had kept her alive during her years evading Aurelian's cybercrime division. The schematics they provided are incomplete. The power core specifications are missing, weapon systems barely mentioned. "It's an old warship," Jax replied, though he shared her unease. "Probably just poor record-keeping." "In the Imperial fleet?" Mina raised an eyebrow. "They document every rivet." The conversation halted as the docking bay doors hissed open. A tall figure in a crisp gray uniform stepped through, flanked by 2 security drones. His posture was military rigid, his face a mask of practiced neutrality. "Lieutenant Commander Varys Wren," the man announced, extending a hand, adorned with the subtle ring that marked high-ranking Imperial officers. "I'll be overseeing this operation on behalf of Nexus Salvage." Jax took the offered hand, noting the calluses that suggested this man was no mere bureaucrat. "Unusual for a client to send a babysitter." "Technical advisor," Varys corrected smoothly. "This vessel contains proprietary technology that requires special handling. I'm here to ensure everything is dismantled according to protocol." "Your money," Jax shrugged. "We'll start with exterior plating tomorrow at Oro 600 station time. The atmospheric stabilizers need calibration before we begin internal work." Varys nodded curtly and departed, leaving behind a datapad containing what he called procedural guidelines. Once the bay doors closed, Slink let out a low whistle. "Imperial. Definitely Imperial." "Ex-Imperial," Cora corrected. "Current employment unknown." Mina snatched up the datapad, her expression darkening as she scrolled through its contents. "These aren't guidelines. They're restrictions. We're being told which sections to dismantle first, which to leave until last." She looked up at Jax. "This isn't standard salvage. They're guiding us through a very specific process." Jax felt the first real stirrings of concern. In 15 years of shipbreaking across the galaxy, he'd developed a sixth sense for trouble. This job was beginning to reek of it. "Keep it professional," he decided finally. Follow their protocol for now. But Mina, I want you to run a deep scan of the ship's systems tonight. If there's something they're not telling us, I want to know before we cut into anything that might blow us halfway to the core worlds." As the crew dispersed to their quarters in the adjoining station module, Jax remained in the bay, studying the massive silhouette of the warship. In the dim, emergency lighting, it seemed to pulse with potential energy, like a beast in hibernation, rather than a dead machine. 800,000 credits was enough to clear his debt with the Thax Syndicate, and still have plenty left over. Enough to disappear, maybe even start fresh on one of the Outer Rim colonies. But first, they had to survive this job. The sandstorm outside intensified, particles pinging against the station's hull like distant gunfire. A fitting soundtrack, Jax thought, for what was beginning to feel less like a salvage operation and more like walking into a trap. Mina hadn't slept. Jax found her the next morning surrounded by projection screens, her eyes bloodshot but alert. "You should see this," she said, without preamble, gesturing to the central display where a three-dimensional wireframe of the warship rotated slowly. Jax leaned in, coffee forgotten in his hand. "What am I looking at?" "Hydraulic systems," Mina replied, zooming in on a complex network of channels that ran throughout the ship's structure. "More extensive than anything I've ever seen on a vessel this size. These aren't just for door mechanisms or landing gear." "Transformative architecture?" Jax suggested, referring to the modular military vessels that could reconfigure their internal layout for different missions. Mina shook her head. "More sophisticated. And look here." She highlighted a section near what appeared to be the bridge. "Heavy shielding around these components. Military grade, but not standard Imperial design. It's older." "How much older?" "Pre-Aurelian. Maybe even dating back to the Second Galactic War." Jax frowned. The timeline didn't make sense. "The contract says this ship was decommissioned after the Third War, less than 30 years ago." "The contract lied," Mina said simply, pulling up another screen. "I managed to access a fragment of the ship's log. Most of it's encrypted beyond my ability to crack quickly. But I found this." A partial insignia flickered on screen. An eagle with outstretched wings, clutching what might have been a scepter. "Imperial," Jax muttered. "Not just Imperial," Mina corrected. "Royal House of Aurelian. This isn't just any Imperial vessel, Jax. I think it's one of the Emperor's personal warships." The implications hit Jax like a physical blow. Emperor Aurelian. I had ruled the core systems with an iron fist for over 40 years. His personal fleet was legendary, vessels equipped with technology far beyond standard Imperial ships, capable of appearing and disappearing from battle, with almost supernatural precision. "If you're right," he said slowly, "we're not just breaking down an old warship, we're dismantling a state secret." "Which explains the generous payment and the Imperial babysitter," Mina concluded. "Question is, does Nexus Salvage know what they've contracted us to dismantle? Or is someone using them as a front?" The bay doors slid open before Jax could respond. Varys strode in, today accompanied by 4 security drones, rather than 2. "You're early," he noted, eyes flicking to the displays which Mina hastily blanked. "Eager to start," Jax replied smoothly. 800,000 credits is motivating." Something flickered across Varys's face. Concern, perhaps, or calculation. "Indeed. I trust you've reviewed the procedural guidelines." "Every word," Jax assured him, though they'd spent the night looking for what the document didn't say, rather than what it did. "We'll begin with the outer hull plating on the starboard side, as requested." Varys nodded, seemingly satisfied. "Excellent. I'll be monitoring from the control room. The drones will assist with heavy lifting." As the day progressed, the crew fell into their familiar rhythm. Cora and Slink, despite their perpetual bickering, worked in perfect tandem, using plasma cutters to slice through the hull plating while the drones transported the metal sheets to the processing unit. Jax supervised the structural integrity, ensuring that they didn't compromise the ship's stability prematurely. Mina, meanwhile, had integrated herself into the ship's remaining active systems under the guise of safety protocols. In reality, she was probing deeper, looking for information about the vessel's true nature. By midday, they had removed nearly a quarter of the external plating, revealing the skeletal superstructure beneath. The work was straightforward, but exhausting. The protective suits necessary in the vacuum of the docking bay adding to the physical strain. During their break in the station's mess hall, Slink voiced what they'd all been thinking. "This is too easy," he said, lowering his voice despite the empty room. "High-value job, minimal security, no complications. When does that ever happen in our line of work?" "Never," Cora replied bluntly, her massive frame hunched over a plate of synthetic protein. "Something's coming. Always does." Jax couldn't disagree. The ease of the operation so far only deepened his unease. If this truly was one of the Emperor's ships, why dismantle it at all? And why here, at a remote station orbiting a desert planet of no strategic importance? "We need to access the bridge," he decided. "That's where we'll find answers." The procedural guidelines specifically prohibit entry to the command deck until Day 5, Mina pointed out. "Then we'll make an unofficial visit tonight," Jax replied. "Can you bypass the security systems?" Mina's slow smile was answer enough. That night, after Varys had retired to his quarters and the station had cycled to its dim night mode lighting, 3 figures made their way silently back to Docking Bay 17. Cora remained behind, keeping watch for any sign of their technical advisor. "Security is more robust than I expected," Mina whispered as they approached the ship's main airlock. "But it's old tech, sophisticated for its time. But I've had 15 years of advancements to work with." Her fingers moved across her portable terminal, executing commands with practiced precision. After several tense minutes, the airlock hissed open. "We have 2 hours before the system runs its next diagnostic cycle," she advised as they stepped inside. "After that, our presence will be logged." The interior of the warship was austere, as expected of a military vessel, but with subtle touches that spoke of its elevated status. The corridors were wider than standard, the materials of higher quality. Emergency lighting cast everything in a dim blue glow, creating pools of shadow in corners and recesses. "Bridge is 6 levels up," Jax murmured, consulting the schematics Mina had extracted. "Maintenance shafts should get us there undetected." They moved quietly through the ship, Slink taking point with a compact pulse rifle ready. The maintenance shafts were narrow and dusty, clearly unused for years, but they provided direct access to the ship's vital areas while bypassing the main corridors with their potential security measures. When they finally emerged onto the bridge, Jax felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's dormant environmental systems. The command center was unlike any he'd seen on Imperial vessels. Larger, more opulent, with a raised platform in the center where a single command chair sat like a throne. "Emperor's Bridge," Slink whispered, lowering his weapon slightly in awe. "We're standing where Aurelian himself once stood." Mina wasted no time with reverence, moving to the central console and connecting her equipment. "Most systems are powered down, but there should be a backup archive. There." Displays flickered to life, casting the room in a soft, amber glow. Data scrolled across the screens, most of it incomprehensible without context. "Wait," Mina's voice sharpened. "This doesn't make sense." "What?" Jax moved to her side. "According to this log, the ship wasn't decommissioned after the Third War. It was—" A sharp hiss interrupted her as the bridge doors slid open. Varys stood in the doorway, a military-grade blaster aimed steadily at Jax's chest. "It was hidden," he finished for her, his voice cold. "And you are jeopardizing a state secret of the highest order." Slink raised his rifle, but Varys didn't even glance his way. The security drones outside have weapons locked on this position. One wrong move, and this entire section gets vented to space. We're just doing our job, Jax said carefully, raising his hands in a placating gesture. The contract didn't specify restricted areas during non-working hours. Don't insult my intelligence, Varys snapped. You've been suspicious from the beginning. I saw your hackers' probes, the unauthorized scans. Then why not stop us earlier? Mina challenged. Something shifted in Varys's expression, a hesitation, quickly masked. Because I needed to know how much you'd discovered, and who you're working for. We don't work for anyone except ourselves, Jax insisted. Nexus Salvage hired us for a job. If there's more to it than dismantling an old warship, that's news to us. Varys studied him for a long moment, his blaster never wavering. Finally, he made a decision. The truth. Then. This vessel is the Eternal Vigilance, personal warship of Emperor Aurelian Thar. It didn't serve in the Third Galactic War. It predates it. This ship possesses technology that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. If it's so valuable, why dismantle it? Slink demanded. Because its existence has become known to certain factions within the Empire, Varys replied. Factions that would use its technology against the Emperor himself, rather than let it fall into the wrong hands. The decision was made to eliminate it entirely. And we're the unwitting tools, Jax concluded, disposable once the job is done. Varys didn't deny it. You have a choice. Complete the contract as specified, with no further unauthorized explorations, and collect your payment, or continue this investigation and face the consequences of interfering in Imperial matters. The threat hung in the air between them. Jax exchanged glances with Mina and Slink, reading the same calculation in their eyes that he was making himself. They could walk away now, finish the job, take the money, and disappear. But something about this entire operation felt wrong. The Emperor dismantling his own secret weapon? Varys's presence here alone, without a proper security detail for such a sensitive mission? We'll stick to the contract, Jax said finally. No more unauthorized access. Relief flickered across Varys's face, so briefly that Jax almost missed it. Wise decision. Return to your quarters. Work resumes at 0600. As they filed past the Imperial officer, Jax couldn't shake the feeling that they just bought themselves time rather than safety. Whatever game was being played here, they were pawns at best and sacrifices at worst. He's lying, Mina declared the moment they were back in the relative safety of their quarters. Not about the ship being the Emperor's, but about why it's being dismantled. Cora, now brought up to speed, nodded in agreement. Imperial officers don't operate alone on missions of this importance. If the Emperor wanted this ship gone, he'd send a fleet to ensure it. And Varys isn't acting like a man with the full weight of the Empire behind him, Jax added. He's nervous, watching his back. Rogue operation? Slink suggested. Maybe our boy Varys is freelancing. The possibility had merit. If the Eternal Vigilance truly contained advanced technology, its components would be worth a fortune to the right buyers. A disgruntled Imperial officer with access and knowledge would be perfectly positioned to orchestrate its discreet dismantling and sale. If that's true, Jax said slowly, we're accessories to treason against the Emperor. The room fell silent as they absorbed the implications. Treason against the Imperial throne carried only one sentence throughout the galaxy: death, usually preceded by extensive interrogation. We need proof, Mina said finally. I only scratched the surface of the ship's archives. With more time, I could find evidence of what Varys is really after. And then what? Cora demanded. We're stuck on a station orbiting a backwater planet, with an Imperial officer and his security drones between us and our ship. Even if we uncover his plan, we're trapped. Not necessarily, Jax countered, an idea forming. The procedural guidelines have us dismantling the ship in a specific sequence, avoiding certain sections until the end. What if those sections contain what Varys is really after? The hydraulic systems, Mina realized. They're scheduled for last. Whatever technology makes this ship special, it must be connected to them. So we play along, Jax decided. Follow the guidelines. Keep Varys thinking we've backed off. Meanwhile, Mina continues probing the ship's systems remotely. We need to know what we're dealing with before we make any moves. The plan wasn't perfect, but it was the best they had. As the others prepared for sleep, Jax remained awake, staring at the ceiling of his Spartan quarters. 800,000 credits had seemed like salvation yesterday. Now, it felt like blood money. His thoughts drifted to the Thax Syndicate and the debt that had driven him to take this job. 3 years ago, a salvage operation had gone catastrophically wrong when a supposedly abandoned station turned out to be a syndicate storage facility. The resulting destruction had cost the crime organization millions in lost product and equipment. Jax had been given a choice: repay the damage or forfeit his life. He'd been working off the debt ever since, taking increasingly dangerous jobs to meet the syndicate's exorbitant interest rates. This job should have cleared his ledger. Instead, it might cost him everything. Morning came too soon. As the crew resumed work on the warship's exterior, Jax noticed subtle changes in Varys's behavior. The Imperial officer was more present, watching their work closely, rather than monitoring from the control room. The security drones had increased to 6, positioned strategically around the docking bay. "He doesn't trust us," Slink muttered as he and Jax worked on a particularly stubborn section of hull plating. "Not after last night." "Good," Jax replied quietly. "Nervous men make mistakes." By midday, they had completed the starboard hull removal and begun work on the port side. The procedural guidelines specified that internal systems should remain untouched until the exterior was fully dismantled. A backwards approach that had raised red flags from the beginning. Standard procedure was to deactivate and remove internal components first, leaving the hull for last. As if to confirm their suspicions, a transmission arrived from Nexus Salvage, delivered by Varys himself. "A modification to the contract," he announced, handing Jax a datapad. "An additional 300,000 credits upon completion, with a time bonus if finished within 7 standard days, rather than the original 10. Jax skimmed the document, noting the digital signatures and official seals that marked it as legitimate, or a very good forgery. "Generous," he remarked, keeping his expression neutral. "Any particular reason for the rush?" "Market fluctuations," Varys replied smoothly. "The value of certain materials is expected to drop. Earlier completion benefits everyone." A transparent lie, but Jax nodded as if satisfied. "We'll accelerate our work. With the additional incentive, my crew will be motivated to push harder." When Varys had departed, Jax shared the development with the others during their break period. "He's feeling pressure," Mina analyzed. "Something's forced his timeline to contract." "Or someone's coming," Cora suggested grimly. "Someone he doesn't want finding us here with this ship." The possibility hung over them as they returned to work. If Imperial forces were en route, either responding to the unauthorized dismantling of an Emperor's vessel, or simply performing a routine check on a supposedly abandoned warship, they needed to be gone before arrival. That evening, as the crew gathered in their quarters to plan, a distant rumble shook the station. At first, Jax mistook it for another sandstorm intensifying, but the vibration was too regular, too mechanical. "That's a ship," Cora stated, her experienced ear recognizing the distinctive sound of engines in atmosphere. "Large one? Military grade?" "Imperial," Slink asked, already moving to the viewport. "Can't tell from the sound alone, but who else would come to this hellhole?" Jax made a quick decision. "Mina, hack into the station's external cameras. We need to see what's landed. Cora, Slink, Prepare our transport for emergency departure. We may need to leave quickly." As the others moved to comply, Jax considered their options. If Imperial forces had arrived, Varys would be either reinforced or exposed as a rogue operator. Either scenario complicated their position. Mina's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Got the feed? It's not Imperial." The view screen showed a sleek vessel unlike the blocky, utilitarian design of Imperial ships. Its hull bore no markings, but its lines spoke of expense and performance. "Private military," Cora identified immediately. "High-end mercenaries or corporate security. Arriving at the same remote station where an Emperor's secret warship is being dismantled," Jax noted. "That's not coincidence." A new complication was the last thing they needed. But it also created opportunity. Whatever game Varys was playing had just acquired new players, and confusion on the board might give them the opening they needed. Change of plans, Jax decided. We accelerate our investigation. Tonight, we find out what's so special about this ship that everyone's willing to kill for it. The night cycle brought no rest for the Ghost Crew. With the arrival of the unidentified vessel, the stakes had escalated beyond dangerous into potentially lethal. Whatever Varys was planning, whatever secret the eternal vigilance held, it was valuable enough to attract serious attention. Station security shows the new arrivals registered as representatives of Cygnus Corporation, Mina reported, her fingers dancing across her terminal as she accessed the station systems. Geological survey team, supposedly. Cygnus doesn't do geological surveys, Cora countered. They're weapons manufacturers, military contractors. Exactly, Jax nodded. Which means they're here for the same reason we're suspicious. There's technology on that ship worth killing for. They gathered in Jax's quarters. Voices kept low, despite Mina's assurance that she'd scrambled the room's monitoring systems. Their plan was simple, but dangerous. While Varys was distracted by the new arrivals, they would access the ship's engine room, the heart of the hydraulic system that had first caught Mina's attention. I've managed to partially decrypt more of the ship's logs, Mina explained, displaying fragmentary text on her portable terminal. Most of it is technical jargon, but there are references to something called Project Eclipse. Apparently, the Eternal Vigilance was its testbed. Any idea what this Project Eclipse was? Jax asked. Mina shook her head. The specific details are locked behind encryption I can't break remotely. We need direct access to the ship's main computer core, which is in the engine room, Slink concluded. Convenient. Risky, Cora corrected. If this technology is as valuable as we think, the engine room will be the most heavily protected section of the ship. She wasn't wrong. Even decommissioned, military vessels maintained basic security protocols around their propulsion systems. An Emperor's personal warship would have layers of defenses beyond standard. I can handle the electronic security, Mina asserted. But physical barriers, armed drones, those are beyond my expertise. That's where we come in, Slink grinned, patting the pulse rifle slung across his back. Cora and I have breached tougher targets. Jax considered the risks. Breaking into the engine room violated their agreement with Varys, potentially triggering immediate reprisal. But with Cygnus representatives now on station, the Imperial officer would be occupied managing this new threat to his operation. We move in 2 hours, he decided. Mina and I will access the engine room and gather whatever data we can on Project Eclipse. Cora, Slink, you two create a diversion to keep Varys and the Cygnus team occupied. The mercenaries exchanged a look that spoke volumes about their experience with diversions. How loud? Cora asked simply. Noticeable enough to draw attention, controlled enough to seem like an accident. Jax specified. We need time, not a firefight. As the crew dispersed to prepare, Jax found himself alone with thoughts he'd been avoiding. This job had spiraled far beyond a simple salvage operation. They were now caught between Imperial secrets, corporate espionage, and a technology apparently worth killing for. The smart play would be to abandon the contract, take their transport, and disappear into the vastness of space. But 800,000 credits, now 1,100,000 with the new bonus, wasn't just money to Jax. It was freedom from the Thax Syndicate, a clean slate after years of operating under their thumb. Walking away meant returning to a life of servitude, taking whatever jobs the Syndicate assigned, regardless of risk or morality. Moreover, a growing part of him needed to know what secret the Eternal Vigilance held. If it was a weapon, as seemed likely, its technology in the wrong hands could shift the balance of power across the galaxy. The Emperor was a tyrant, certainly, but a stable one. The chaos that would follow a successful coup, a corporate military takeover, or a rogue imperial faction seizing power would cost millions of lives. 2 hours later, the crew reconvened at their transport ship, now prepped for emergency departure. Cora and Slink had assembled an impressive array of equipment for their diversion. Nothing obviously weaponized. But Jax had learned long ago that in skilled hands, even maintenance tools could become devastatingly effective. Remember, we need information, not a confrontation, Jax reminded them all. If we're discovered, abort and head for the transport. No heroics. Except yours, Mina pointed out with a wry smile. Accessing the Emperor's secret technology qualifies as heroic in my book. Or suicidal, Cora added helpfully. The plan began with precision. Cora and Slink made their way to the station's primary power distribution center, where a carefully orchestrated malfunction would draw security attention. Meanwhile, Jax and Mina used the maintenance access tunnels to approach the warship from below, bypassing the main docking bay entirely. Security's been increased, Mina whispered, as they reached an auxiliary airlock rarely used, except during major overhauls. 4 new sensor arrays, and the drone patrols have doubled. Can you handle it? Jax asked, checking his own equipment one last time. He carried no weapons. They would be useless against drones anyway, but wore a utility harness laden with tools that could serve as impromptu weapons if necessary. Mina's response was to connect her terminal to the airlock's control panel. After several tense minutes of digital warfare, invisible to Jax, the airlock cycled open with a soft hiss. We have 30 seconds before the system registers the unauthorized access, she warned, as they slipped inside. The interior of the ship was eerily silent, emergency lighting casting long shadows down empty corridors. They moved quickly, but cautiously, following the route Mina had mapped from the ship's schematics. The engine room was located at the vessel's stern, protected by multiple security checkpoints that would normally require Imperial clearance. They had navigated halfway to their destination when a distant boom reverberated through the ship's structure. Diversion started, Jax noted, checking his chronometer. Right on schedule. Almost immediately, alarms began to sound throughout the station. Overhead announcements reported a containment breach in Power Sector 7 and directed all security personnel to respond. That should keep Varys busy, Mina said as they continued their journey deeper into the ship. The engine room doors were sealed with both electronic and mechanical locks. Standard Imperial security protocol for sensitive areas. Mina made quick work of the electronic components, but the physical lock required Jax's expertise with the tools of his trade. Pressure seal intact, he muttered as he worked. That's unusual for a decommissioned vessel. They typically vent atmosphere from non-essential areas to reduce maintenance costs. Another sign this isn't a standard derelict, Mina agreed. The lock finally yielded with a satisfying click. Jax eased the massive door open, just enough for them to slip through, then sealed it behind them. The engine room of the Eternal Vigilance defied expectations. Rather than the massive antimatter reactors typical of Imperial warships, the chamber housed a compact core surrounded by the intricate hydraulic systems Mina had identified in her scans. The technology appeared both advanced and oddly archaic, with components that seemed to belong to different eras of engineering. This isn't a standard propulsion system, Jax realized, moving closer to examine the core. I've never seen anything like it. Mina was already connecting to the computer terminal adjacent to the core. Whatever it is, the ship's computer should have operational data. Her expression grew increasingly troubled as information scrolled across her screen. Jax, this isn't just an engine. I think it's a phase shift device. Phase shift? Like theoretical fold space technology? Jax had heard rumors of research into such capabilities. The ability to shift a vessel partially out of normal space-time, rendering it effectively invisible and untouchable. But all reports suggested such technology was decades, if not centuries, from practical application. Not theoretical anymore, Mina confirmed grimly. According to these logs, the Eternal Vigilance successfully executed phase shifts during the Second Galactic War. It could appear and disappear at will, striking without warning and vanishing before retaliation was possible. The implications were staggering. A fleet equipped with such technology would be virtually unstoppable, capable of bypassing any defense, striking anywhere in the galaxy without warning. If this technology works, why isn't every Imperial ship equipped with it? Jax wondered aloud. Mina continued reading, her expression growing darker. Because it's unstable. The phase shifts created temporal anomalies, side effects they couldn't control. According to this, during the final test, the ship disappeared for what the crew experienced as moments, but emerged 3 years later in real time. Time dilation, Jax breathed. Not just phase shifting in space, but in time as well. Uncontrolled time dilation, Mina corrected. The logs show they never managed to predict or control the temporal aspect. The Emperor ordered the project shut down and the ship hidden away. She looked up from the terminal, face pale. Jax, this technology could unravel the fabric of space-time if misused. Before Jax could respond, a new alarm sounded, this one coming from the ship itself, rather than the station. Red emergency lights began to pulse, and a computerized voice announced, "Security breach detected. Automated defense systems activating." "That's not supposed to happen," Mina said, fingers flying across her terminal. "The defense systems should be dormant." "Someone woke them up," Jax guessed, already moving toward the door. "We need to get out of here, now." The door wouldn't budge. "Locked down," he reported, turning back to Mina. "Can you override it?" She was already trying, but shook her head in frustration. "The ship's AI has taken control. It's executing some kind of protection protocol." Her eyes widened as new information appeared on her screen. "Jax, the hydraulic systems are activating. The phase shift core is powering up." A low hum began to fill the engine room, the dormant machinery around them coming to life after decades of inactivity. The hydraulic systems that had first caught Mina's attention began to pulse with blue-green energy, the fluid within them glowing with increasing intensity. "Shut it down!" Jax shouted over the rising whine of the core. "I'm trying!" Mina's hands were a blur across her terminal. "The system's rejecting all commands. It's running an automated sequence. I think it's preparing for a phase shift." The implications struck Jax with cold clarity. If the ship phase shifted with them aboard, they could end up anywhere, or anywhen. Given the technology's unpredictability, they might emerge years in the future, or not at all. A new explosion rocked the ship, this one clearly not part of Cora and Slink's diversion. The deck plates vibrated beneath their feet, and the engine room lights flickered momentarily. "Someone's attacking the ship," Jax realized. The Cygnus team must have made their move. "Or Varus is destroying the evidence," Mina countered, still fighting the ship's systems. "Either way, we're trapped in a powering-up experimental engine room on a ship under attack. Not our best day." Jax activated his comm unit. "Cora, Slink, status report." Static answered him for several seconds before Cora's voice broke through, distorted but recognizable. Stations in chaos. Cygnus Security is exchanging fire with Varus and his drones. They're fighting their way toward the ship. What's happening in there? The ship's waking up, Jax reported tersely. Automated defenses online, and the phase shift drive is activating. We're locked in the engine room. Phase what? Slink's voice now. Never mind, we're coming to get you out. Negative, Jax ordered. Get to the transport and prepare for emergency departure. If we can't stop this activation sequence, the ship might disappear with us on it. The hydraulic systems were now pulsing rapidly, the blue-green energy flowing through the ship's structure like luminescent blood through veins. The core itself had begun to rotate, generating a low-frequency vibration that Jax could feel in his bones. Mina, options? She didn't look up from her terminal. 2 possibilities. 1. I keep trying to shut down the sequence, which seems increasingly unlikely to succeed. 2. We find a way out of this room before the phase shift completes. Jax examined the sealed door again, then turned his attention to the rest of the engine room. Imperial vessels typically included emergency evacuation routes from critical areas, standard safety protocol that even an Emperor's ship would follow. There, he pointed to a recessed panel near the auxiliary systems. Emergency evacuation tube. Should lead to an escape pod or at least a different section of the ship. While Mina continued her digital battle with the ship's AI, Jax worked to access the evacuation route. The panel was sealed with the same type of lock as the main door, but designed for quicker operation in emergencies. Another explosion rocked the ship, closer this time. The lights flickered again, longer, and several systems briefly went offline before emergency power restored them. Whatever they're fighting with out there, it's heavy duty, Jax noted as he worked on the lock. Military-grade weapons. Hurry, Mina urged. The phase shift sequence is at 70%. I've managed to slow it down, but I can't stop it entirely. The lock finally yielded, and the panel slid aside to reveal a narrow passage. Got it! Let's go! Mina hesitated, looking back at her terminal. Wait, I can download the phase shift data. If this technology is as dangerous as it seems, we need proof of what it can do. There's no time, Jax insisted, but Mina was already initiating the download. 30 seconds, she promised. This information could be crucial. Jax wanted to argue, but she was right. If they survived this, evidence of the ship's capabilities might be their only leverage, or their only warning to others about the danger it represented. The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. The core's rotation accelerated, and the humming intensified to a pitch that made Jax's teeth ache. Download complete, Mina announced, disconnecting her terminal and rushing to join Jax at the evacuation tube. Phase shift at 85% and climbing. They scrambled into the narrow passage, which angled sharply upward toward the deck above. Designed for emergency use, it offered handholds and footholds, but was uncomfortably tight, especially for someone of Jax's build. If we can reach the main deck, we might be able to get to an airlock, he called down to Mina as they climbed. From there, we could spacewalk back to the station if necessary. Assuming the phase shift doesn't complete first, she replied grimly. And assuming the fighting hasn't reached that section. The passage ended at another panel, this one opening more easily from their side. They emerged into a corridor Jax recognized from the ship's schematics as part of the crew quarters section, one deck above the engine room. The scene that greeted them was chaos. Emergency lighting flashed red, and the ship's computerized voice continued announcing security breaches and defense system activations. In the distance, they could hear weapons fire, the distinctive whine of Imperial blasters mingling with the deeper thrum of something more powerful. This way. Jax oriented himself quickly, pointing toward what should be the nearest airlock. We need to... His direction was cut short as a figure stumbled around the corner ahead, clutching a bleeding wound in his side. Varus Wren's immaculate uniform was now torn and stained, his composed demeanor replaced by desperation. He raised his blaster upon seeing them, but the weapon wavered in his unsteady hand. "You," he rasped. "What have you done?" "We didn't start the activation sequence," Jax replied, raising his hands slowly. "The ship's AI initiated it when the attack began." "Attack?" Varas laughed bitterly. "This isn't an attack. It's a coup. My own security drones, reprogrammed to eliminate me and secure the ship." "Cygnus," Mina realized. "They weren't here by coincidence. They've been tracking you, waiting for their opportunity." Varas nodded weakly, leaning against the wall for support. "I was a fool to think I could keep this ship's existence secret once I moved it. Too many eyes watching, too many interests at stake." He fixed Jax with an intense stare. "The phase shift is activating?" 85% when we left the engine room," Mina confirmed. "Maybe higher now. We couldn't stop it." "No one can," Varas said grimly. "Once initiated, the sequence completes. It was designed that way. A fail-safe to prevent interrupted shifts, which caused catastrophic results during early testing." Another explosion rocked the ship, close enough to shower them with sparks from damaged circuitry overhead. The deck plates beneath their feet vibrated continuously now, the ship's structure resonating with the energy building in its core. "We need to get off this ship," Jax stated the obvious. "All of us. Whatever game you were playing. Lieutenant Commander, it's over." Varas straightened with visible effort. "Not Lieutenant Commander. Admiral. Admiral Varys Wren, Imperial Fleet Intelligence." He grimaced as the movement aggravated his wound. And this was never a game. It was a mission to prevent exactly what's happening now. This technology falling into the wrong hands. "You were dismantling an Emperor's ship without authorization," Mina accused. "With the Emperor's direct authorization," Varys corrected. "But quietly, without drawing attention. The official record states this ship was destroyed decades ago. Its continued existence is known to only a handful of people in the Imperial hierarchy." Another blast, another shower of sparks. The ship's announcement changed. Phase shift sequence at 90%. Spatial coordinates locked. Temporal coordinates undefined. "Explain later," Jax decided, moving to support Varys. "Right now, we need to reach an airlock before this ship disappears with us on it." They moved as quickly as Varys' injury allowed, navigating corridors increasingly filled with smoke from damaged systems. The sounds of combat grew louder as they approached the ship's central section, suggesting the Cygnus forces, or the reprogrammed security drones, were converging on the bridge. "They want the control systems," Varys explained between labored breaths. "Think they can direct the phase shift, use the ship as a weapon." "Can they?" Mina asked. "No. The technology is fundamentally unstable. That's why it was abandoned. But they don't know that, or don't believe it." They reached a junction where the corridor split in 3 directions. Jax oriented himself again, consulting his mental map of the ship. "Airlock should be that way." He indicated the left passage. Before they could proceed, a security drone rounded the corner ahead, its weapon systems immediately locking onto them. Unlike the standard models Varys had brought to supervise their work, this one had been modified with heavier armament, military-grade weaponry that could vaporize a human target. "Down!" Jax shouted, dragging both Mina and Varys into the right-hand corridor as energy fire scorched the wall where they had been standing. The drone advanced methodically, its programming allowing for no hesitation or error. They retreated deeper into the ship, away from their planned escape route, with the drone in pursuit. "We need weapons," Mina hissed, as they ducked into a side room. Crew quarters, sparsely furnished and long abandoned. Varys weakly offered his blaster. "Power cell nearly depleted. 2, maybe 3 shots left." Jax took the weapon, but knew it would be insufficient against the heavily armored drone. "We need to reach the airlock. There's another one near the forward section, but we'd have to circle around half the ship to reach it." The ship's announcement updated again. Phase shift sequence at 95%. Spatial coordinates locked. Temporal coordinates undefined. All personnel prepare for transition. Their time was running out. The drone would be methodically searching nearby rooms, and the phase shift was minutes, perhaps seconds, from completion. Jax faced a choice that had been building since they discovered the truth about the eternal vigilance. Try to escape with his crew, or prevent the technology from falling into dangerous hands. "Mina," he said quietly, "you need to get to the airlock. Take Varas and find Cora and Slink. Get back to the transport and be ready to leave immediately." Her eyes widened with understanding. "What are you going to do?" "Buy you time," he replied simply. "And make sure this ship's technology doesn't destroy the galaxy." "Jax, no. The data you downloaded," he cut her off. "Is it enough to prove what this ship can do? Enough to warn people about the dangers?" She nodded reluctantly. "Yes, but—" "Then my decision is made." He pressed Varys's blaster into her hand. "Get to safety. I'll handle the drone and make sure the phase shift completes without interference." "You'll be trapped on the ship," she protested. "You could end up anywhere, anywhen." "Better than letting this technology fall into the wrong hands." Jax smiled faintly. "Besides, I've always wanted to see the future." Varys spoke up, his voice stronger than before. "The secondary escape pods. Deck 3, forward section. If you can reach them after dealing with the drone, you might still escape before the shift completes." Jax nodded his thanks. "Go. Now. I'll draw the drone away." Mina hesitated only a moment longer before helping Varys to his feet. "Don't be a hero," she warned Jax. "Just enough distraction for us to get clear. Then get yourself to those escape pods." "That's the plan," he assured her. Though they both knew plans rarely survived first contact with reality. As Mina and Varys slipped out through a connecting door to the adjacent quarters, Jax prepared to face the drone. His utility harness contained tools that, while not designed as weapons, could potentially disable or at least damage a security unit if applied correctly. The ship's announcement came again. Phase shift sequence at 98%. Spatial coordinates locked. Temporal coordinates undefined. Transition imminent. Time was running out. Jax moved to the quarters entrance and deliberately made noise, knocking over a chair to attract the drone's attention. The strategy worked immediately. Too well, in fact. The drone appeared in the doorway, weapons already charging. Jax dove behind a metal desk as energy fire scorched the air where he had stood. The quarters offered little cover, but the drone's bulk prevented it from maneuvering quickly in the confined space. He used this to his advantage, staying in motion, keeping the desk between himself and the machine as he worked his way closer. When he was within range, Jax deployed his riskiest tool, a plasma cutter designed for hull plating. At close range, its focused beam could penetrate the drone's armor if applied to the right spot. The challenge was getting close enough without being vaporized. The drone tracked his movements relentlessly, its programming sophisticated enough to predict standard evasion patterns. Jax had to be unpredictable, chaotic in his approach. He feinted left, then right, then hurled a piece of broken furniture at the drone's optical sensors. The distraction worked just long enough. As the drone's weapons tracked the flying debris, Jax lunged forward, plasma cutter activated. Its blue-white beam connected with the junction between the drone's main body and its weapons array, a vulnerable point in most Imperial security models. The drone's systems shorted out in a cascade of sparks and smoke, its weapons powered down, but not before a final discharge caught Jax in the side, burning through his utility harness and into flesh. The pain was immediate and intense, but he forced himself to remain focused. The ship shuddered violently, the deck plates beneath him vibrating at a frequency that made his vision blur. The phase shift was beginning. Phase shift sequence at 99%. Transition commencing. Clutching his injured side, Jax made his way out of the quarters and back into the corridor. The escape pods Varys had mentioned were his only chance now. He moved as quickly as his wound allowed, navigating by emergency lighting alone as the ship's main power diverted entirely to the phase shift process. The corridors seemed to stretch and distort around him, an effect of the energies now permeating the vessel. Reality itself appeared to bend, straight lines becoming curved, solid objects taking on a translucent quality. The phase shift was altering the ship's relationship with normal spacetime. Jax reached the forward section just as the final announcement sounded. Phase shift complete. Transitioning. The world outside the viewports disappeared, replaced by a swirling vortex of energy, unlike anything Jax had ever seen. Colors that had no name in human language pulsed and flowed, creating patterns that seemed to contain meaning just beyond comprehension. He reached the escape pod bay, but the pods themselves had changed. Like everything else aboard, they seemed partially transparent, caught between states of existence. Whether they would function in this condition was unknown, but they represented his only hope. As Jax dragged himself into the nearest pod and activated its launch sequence, he wondered what world, what time, he would emerge into. The Thax Syndicate and his debt would be long gone, one way or another. His crew, his friends, would be safe if they had reached the transport in time. The escape pod ejected from the ship with a jolt that aggravated his injury. Through its small viewport, Jax watched as the Eternal Vigilance completed its transformation, becoming increasingly translucent until, with a flash of that nameless energy, it disappeared entirely. The pod tumbled through space, its navigation systems trying to make sense of surroundings that no longer matched any known star charts. The phase shift had affected the pod as well, though apparently to a lesser degree than the ship itself. As consciousness began to fade, Jax found himself smiling. Whatever happened next, he had completed his mission. His crew was safe. The dangerous technology was out of reach, and he was, finally, free of all debts. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was a vessel approaching, sleek and unfamiliar in design, bearing no imperial insignia or corporate markings. A ship from another time, perhaps, or another civilization entirely. His adventure, it seemed, was just beginning. On the transport vessel, speeding away from Zarin Station, Mina watched through the viewport as the Eternal Vigilance shimmered, distorted, and vanished in a flash of impossible light. The escape pod they had been tracking, Jax's pod, disappeared with it, caught in the phase shift's effect. "He's gone," Slink said quietly, standing beside her. "Shifted to who knows where or when." "The data remains," Mina replied, holding up her terminal. "The truth about the ship, the technology, the danger it represents. Jax ensured we got away with it." In the medical bay, Varys was recovering under Cora's surprisingly competent care. The Imperial Admiral, for his credentials had proven genuine, had revealed the full story during their escape. Emperor Aurelian had indeed ordered the ship dismantled, fearing its technology would destabilize the galaxy if discovered. Varys had been entrusted with the mission, operating with minimal support to maintain secrecy. The Cygnus Corporation, it seemed, had infiltrated Imperial intelligence and learned of the operation. Their goal had been to capture the ship intact, reverse engineer its phase shift technology, and create weapons that could strike anywhere, anywhen, an unbeatable advantage in the corporate wars that raged alongside the political conflicts of the galaxy. "What now?" Cora asked, emerging from the medical bay. "We're fugitives from both the Empire and Cygnus. The moment we dock anywhere civilized, we'll be hunted." "Not necessarily," Varys called weakly from his bed. "The Emperor values results above all else. We prevented the technology from falling into dangerous hands. That counts for something." "Enough to overlook our unauthorized investigation?" Slink asked skeptically. "Enough to offer protection, perhaps, in exchange for your silence about what you've seen and learned." Mina clutched her terminal tighter, And this data, the truth about the ship? Varus met her gaze steadily. That's your decision, but consider the consequences carefully. Some truths are dangerous merely in their telling. The Ghost crew faced a choice similar to the one Jax had made. Prioritize their own safety and prosperity, or take a stand for what they believed was right. The phase shift technology was too dangerous to exist, but too dangerous to forget entirely. Its story needed to be told, but selectively, to those who could prevent its recreation. We'll need guarantees, Mina decided, speaking for the crew in Jax's absence. Immunity, payment of the contract in full, and the freedom to continue our work without Imperial interference. Varus nodded slowly. I believe that can be arranged. The Emperor values discretion in these matters. As the transport accelerated away from Jaren, leaving behind the site where an Emperor's ship had vanished into the unknown, Mina looked again at the data she had salvaged. It represented both danger and opportunity, the kind of knowledge that could destroy worlds or save them, depending on whose hands it reached. Jax had sacrificed himself to keep it from the wrong hands. Now it fell to her, to all of them, to ensure it reached the right ones. Set course for the outer rim, she instructed Slink, who had taken the pilot's seat. We have work to do. The transport vanished into hyperspace, carrying with it the survivors of an encounter with technology too dangerous for any one power to control. Behind them, in the space where the eternal vigilance had been, subspace energies continued to swirl and settle, a reminder that some boundaries, once crossed, could never be fully sealed again. Somewhere, someone, Jax Orin drifted in an escape pod, carried by currents of time and space beyond human comprehension. Whether he would emerge in the distant past, the far future, or some parallel reality entirely, not even the Emperor's scientists could predict. But the Ghost crew would be waiting, however long it took. After all, ghosts had a way of returning when least expected. And in the shadowy corridors of power, where emperors and corporations played their games of conquest, a new whisper began to circulate. Beware the technology that bends time itself, for it answers to no master, recognizes no empire, and keeps its own counsel about where and when it will appear again.